it. So the agenda tonight will be to cover what you see here on the screen, what our mission and structure is, what to expect in a disaster, 5 steps for any disaster, what fire adapted communities are about, and after we have an understanding of that concept, then Firewise makes a lot of sense. Our communication network, and then a summary. And I do have 2 videos I'm going to show during the presentation. One is from FireSafe Marin, and another is a gentleman from the Novato Fire. And they do a really good job of talking about the subject matter, so I thought I'd incorporate them, and you won't have to listen to me for the full 45 minutes. So what is VERG? We're a community organization staffed by volunteers, and we collaborate with the Marin County Fire Department. The strength of our program is really kind of what we're seeing tonight, that there's a social cohesion of neighbors who have good reason to get to know each other, and also to look out for one another and help one another when disaster strikes. And we believe that in a disaster, individuals and families, if they're prepared, our entire community will be safer. We also, it's critical to know when to leave and where to go ahead of time, so that you have, a clear picture of how you're going to evacuate. If you're leaving quickly, you'll need a go kit that has important belongings in it, and things that you'll need in case there is some issue on the evacuation. If you need to stay home, and this would be not only in the case of some fire situations where there's a stay-at-home order, but also in the event of an earthquake, you'll need a minimum of supplies for 5 to 7 days. And then finally, we believe that if neighborhoods are organized, that neighbors can help one another, whether it be if there's a vulnerable neighbor, or if there are children or pets or whatever it may be. But when we all know each other and work together, then the whole neighbor benefits. So here's the structure of our organization. Brian McCarthy is a co-chair, as I am. Brian is a former battalion chief from the Ross Valley Fire Department, so he brings a wealth of knowledge about, he's gone through a number of fire disasters. He brings a wealth of knowledge about how we would respond in a disaster and how to prepare. You can see here in the middle a line of village coordinators. These folks are it's the next level in the hierarchy, and they're not only there to keep all the neighborhoods and the neighborhood leaders to create some organization there, but they also are focused on recruiting or enrolling more members, because we definitely want to see more of the Valley participating in VERG. Right now, on the next level, we have 71 neighborhood leaders, and to really truly represent the Valley on the level that we think is appropriate, which is about, say, 18 neighbors to 1 neighborhood leader, we need to increase that number. Our goal is to increase that number from 71 to 140 neighborhood leaders.
Double.
We have several committees in the organization. We have a communications committee headed by James Sanders. We have a radio committee headed by Ken Adams, and a fundraising committee headed by Megan Oakes Potter. Currently, our membership is 741, but our goal is to get to 2,500, which is about 80% of the population of the Valley. We figure that 20% of folks are probably, maybe not interested, or, being part of a group isn't something they have an inclination to do. But again, the idea is, the more folks we have in the Valley that are prepared, the more that can also join in on some of the projects that we're lining up. We think it makes the Valley stronger. So what to expect in a disaster? This is a really critical concept to understand, and it really speaks to why we exist. So first off, local government emergency services will have limited ability to help. Consider that fire, police, and paramedics are probably going to be overwhelmed. In terms of a fire, the firefighters, I live I can almost see the fire station from my house, which, gave me a lot of comfort when I first moved here. But then I learned that, if there's a fire, they may all be gone. They might be fighting that fire. So they're not going to be here to help me in my neighborhood. We also know that, police and paramedics are going to be out there on the front line. So they're not going to be able to lend us a hand. Obviously, utilities, internet access, and cell service will be out, and we don't need a disaster for that to happen. I think that goes PG&E and Comcast see to that regularly. Roads might be impassable or blocked, and there may be injuries. So for fire, we should expect to evacuate quickly or shelter in place as advised by Alert Marin. For earthquake, we should plan to be self-sufficient for 5 to 7 or more days. Power outages, PG&E says they may last 5 days or longer. And then we should have the expectation that things like battery backups and generators may only last a couple of days. So it helps us have a better set of expectations around what's going to happen in a disaster, and which helps us to be better prepared. So in terms of preparation, then we look at these 5 steps for any disaster. First off, get alerts so that you know what's going on, what sort of disaster is happening, and also we have information on how to interpret those alerts. It's critical to make a plan to protect your people. If there is a fire, for instance, people will be on edge and will not be thinking clearly, won't be able to organize things, won't be able to gather things. So having a plan and knowing what you should be taking with you, where you're going, having a communication plan is very critical. We want folks to get to safety with the things they need, like their documents, their pets, their passports, with some spending cash and so on. So we have a checklist for that. We want folks to be safe at home if they can't leave. And then finally, we encourage friends and neighbors to help one another get ready. So the first thing that we had there was alerts, and these are the alerts that are important for us here in the Valley. Alert Marin is something that is issued and is very specific, and it can even be specific to an address. And this is important in a couple of scenarios. One is if, say, for instance, there's something like an active shooter, then Alert Marin is going to say to people in that area, maybe it's a block or two, that they need to stay inside, lock their doors, that sort of thing. In terms of fire, the situation could be that the fire service has decided to evacuate people, say, in groups or in tiers. Maybe they've decided that everyone who lives the furthest away, say folks up on Buckeye Circle, need to leave first, and then your group on Redwood would leave second. And that's what they accomplished with Alert Marin. It's very targeted and it's very specific. Nixle is another alert that's important to have. It's going to have, it's going to do things by zip code. So it'll certainly tell us when there's a red flag warning. It'll talk about road closures, post-disaster information about shelters and transportation, and police activity. But again, it is a sort of, it's something that's going to go to the entire zip code. And then finally, I've got something here with PG&E. You probably already know this, that if you are a PG&E customer, you're going to get these PSPS watch, PSPS warning, the update, and power restored notification. However, there's a new service from PG&E that will allow you to get notifications of power outages at another address. So, for example, if you have relatives that live in Bolinas and you want to know if their power is out, you can sign up and get a notification that whether or not their power is on or off. So, especially if you have, say, older parents or younger kids, family, you name it, you can sign up for that by going to the PG&E site and get that alert sent out to you. Just curious, is everyone signed up? If you're signed up for these alerts, please raise your hand. Okay, good.
We are
All right.
signed.
Terrific.
Let me see.
So what are the terminology that are associated with those alerts? We've got 3 listed here: the evacuation order, which means evacuate immediately, don't delay, just go. The evacuation warning, evacuate as soon as possible. It's okay to have a delay to get things like your go kit, prepare your home. The fire service says they're probably the minimum amount of time when they issue an evacuation warning prior to the evacuation order is about 2 hours. And it could be longer. I know that the evacuation warnings were issued in when the Woodward fire was happening for quite some time. So the warning definitely means that you'll have some time to go ahead and gather your go kit and some other belongings and maybe prepare your home. And then finally, shelter in place, which is obviously stay in your current location. That could be, for any number of reasons. I've also listed some available information sources, like Alert Marin, which we've already talked about, social media, Twitter and Facebook. The Twitter feeds for the sheriff and for the fire department are both available. Local media like KWMR, the TV stations, they'll have information. But please, when you're, if you do find out there's a red flag day or red flag warning, make sure that all your neighbors are aware that a red flag warning is in place. And that's the kind of thing that we would ask Jeanette to do. Obviously, we're getting red flag warning notices now, but if there is possibly a neighbor who doesn't have internet service or who may not be tuned into something like red flag warnings, we'd ask that Jeanette or someone in the neighborhood go talk to that person who may not have internet access. And then finally, we have the Marin County Fire Information Line. It's best to call this number. If you call the number for the fire department, they're not going to be able to help you. This fire information line is the best source of information. There's also a new County of Marin emergency portal, and you can see that over here there's a map. This is kind of the main view that you get when you go on this portal. And when I took this snapshot, the only thing that was going on at the time, there was some traffic on the freeway. But if you look down here in the right-hand corner, you can see a little red icon with a circle around it. And that is associated with this power outage that was going on at the time. It was a small power outage. There were only about 12 people that had a PG&E outage at that time, but they have it listed on the map. And you can see some of the other indicators here in the legend of what might be shown if there's something like a flash flood or a fire, earthquake, obviously, if there's natural gas leaks, structure damage, information about shelters, whether they're inactive, they're open or full, information about power outages, where there's a planned outage or an unplanned outage, and then also evacuation areas. So there's a wealth of information on this emergency portal. It was put into service at the end of 2020, and you can see the URL up here. I'll be sending Jeanette a list of all the URLs that are in the presentation today, so that if you want to visit any of those sites and get some of the information that's there, or bookmark them so you can go to them later on, you'll have that information later on tonight or early tomorrow. So we talked about making a plan, and that's 2 plans. It's a communication plan and evacuation checklist. It includes information about home, school, work, child care, contacts that are out of town, fire, police, hospital information, medical insurance info. Really, we urge folks to print a list of the things that you would take if you had 10 minutes to evacuate, 30 minutes or an hour. And again, if there's a threat of evacuation, folks are going to be stressed out. So trying to create that list in the moment is really going to be a hard task. So, we encourage folks to make it easy for them to actually get the things that they would like to take with them, like family mementos or other things that are important to them. And also have a family meeting to be sure that everybody knows where the plan is, where the go bag is, and practice an evacuation. You can create this plan and save it to everybody's mobile phone, and if someone doesn't have a phone, print a hard copy for it. And I've got an example of the Fire Safe Marin checklist here. You can see all the things that I mentioned around household information, school, childcare, caregiver information, local contacts, out-of-area contacts, emergency meeting locations, physician contacts, and insurance are all here. Plus, there's a little bit of a mention on the bottom of the Go Kit. We kind of use the term Go Kit and Go Bag interchangeably. But there's a short list of things that would go in your go bag. And I'm going to play a video in a minute that's from Todd Lando, who is from the fire service and from Fire Safe Marin, who's going to elaborate more on what really should go in a go bag. And then here's the wildfire evacuation checklist. It lists those alerts that we talked about just a moment ago, distinguishes between an order, a warning, and a shelter in place. Gets into the kind of things that you should always do, the sort of things you should always take with you. Pets and animals, you know, if there's an evacuation warning, it's strongly advised to put the pets someplace that you can easily get to them and put them in a car so that you can leave. And then it gets into some things around if time allows, like move combustible items away from homes. Or open the fence and side gates, which when I first saw that, I wasn't sure why we would want to leave our gate open, but it's because fire travels up and around wooden fences. So by opening the gate, it creates a fire break, and it will prohibit fire from going from your fence to your house. They also mentioned, you know, put buckets out of water so that if a fireman comes in your property and there's a small fire, that they can just use the bucket and put out, you know, some fire that may be in some leaf litter. Also, when you leave, it is really important, or prior to leaving, it's important to make sure that your car is, try and keep it filled, at least half filled with gas. If you drive an electric car, make sure it's charged so that you have the fuel you need to leave. And point cars in the direction of an evacuation. What you don't want to be doing is trying to turn around when people are or maybe going quite fast past your house. You want to have your car pointed in the right direction so you can just drive out of your driveway and go to wherever has been indicated. So a quick look at both the communication plan and the evacuation checklist. And we also have some evacuation maps that point out, as everyone knows, we have limited areas limited ways we're going to get out of the valley. We're going to go east, west, or north. And in an emergency, there'll be people that are directing traffic and making sure you go in the right direction. But what also is important in this map that I'm showing are the emergency refuge areas. And those are, let's say that it's a situation where you're just not able to leave and you have to stay, you're no longer in your home. Well, these are the places that you can go to that are considered to be emergency refuges. One would be the Woodacre Improvement Club, also the clubhouse at the old golf course, the Presbyterian Church, and then the Lagunitas School. And then here's a closer look at evacuation routes for Woodacre. Again, I think, it's kind of straightforward on how we're going to evacuate. The one thing I think is very important in this map is that it shows X's on all the fire roads, and those are not to be used. Not only could there be fire up on those roads, but the fire service might be using them to try and get to a fire. And if you're driving in the opposite direction of the fire service, it's going to really cause a big issue. If you go to Fire Safe Marin and go to the maps, you can see you can scan a QR code and download these maps to your phone or to your tablet if you want to have those as a resource on either your phone or tablet. Next, though, I've got Todd Landau, who's going to talk about the personal preparedness and the evacuation checklists that I just brought up. So we've got a 6-minute video coming up, and I'll turn it over to Todd.
I'm Todd Landau. I'm the Wildfire Hazard Mitigation Specialist, the Battalion Chief with Central Marin Fire Department. I'm the Vice President at Fire Safe Marin. I've been active as a firefighter in the wildfire prevention community in Marin for almost 30 years. This checklist is available at firesafemarin.org on our evacuation page. We distribute it by paper. It's downloadable in a PDF format. You really ought to have one. I'd love for everyone who's watching tonight to review this. And although it has some Marin-specific information, overall, this would be useful to just about anybody who lives in California. Divided into 3 columns. The first column are when there's a wildfire burning nearby or there's an evacuation warning or order. The second column are things that you'll also do if you have time. So really things that you'll do if there's an evacuation warning or if you're simply concerned because it's a red flag warning that's been issued or we're deep in the fire season. And the third column are things that you'll do when you're actually evacuating, when you're on the road, once you've left. I would like everybody who's watching this, if you don't have one already, to go home, put together a wildfire and emergency go kit. If you live in California, you need to have a kit that prepares you for earthquakes. You probably need to have one that prepares you for floods. If you live near hillsides, you probably need to prepare for mudslides. We need to be prepared for emergencies because we live here in a place that's just constantly confronted by emergencies. Wildfire go kits have some special needs. Our evacuation checklist at Fire Safe Marin goes through all of the contents, but I'll real quickly run through what I think is critical in your wildfire go kit. Flashlights. The photographs Shaunamar showed of her evacuation were midday, late morning. They were dark as night. Doesn't matter what time you evacuate, you are going to need a flashlight. And every firefighter I know carries multiple flashlights, one in every pocket, with backup spare batteries. So have a headlamp, have multiple handheld flashlights, and have spare batteries in your go kit. One of the most important things you can have. Make sure that you've got an AM/FM radio. Our checklist goes through items like spending cash, maybe a duplicate credit card, important documents, copies of your passports, your insurance information, a small first aid kit, drinking water. You don't need 3 days of drinking water, and I don't want you to carry 3 days of drinking water like you might have in your earthquake survival kit. In your wildfire go kit, you need to have enough drinking water to get you out of town. You need to have some high energy food. You need to have some basic tools. We're going to talk a little bit about emergency clothing and what you should wear, and that's something that should be with your go kit or inside your go kit, ready to go at all times. Store this in a backpack. We want you to be able to put this on your back and move on foot, even though we're going to talk a lot about evacuating by car and why that should be your first choice. It still needs to be portable and something that you can take with you if you do need to leave your car in that outlier scenario. Keep these in your car. You're always with your car or near your front door during fire season. Make a kit for every member of your family, especially for your kids. Make a kit that might be a little different than yours for your pets. The second column are things that you can do to prepare your home, inside and outside or around your neighborhood. We want you to follow the checklist. I'm going to give you a few of the highlights. We want you to, if time allows, back your car into your driveway. Make sure your car is ready to go. Make sure it's packed with the things that you need to take with you. Close the doors and windows in your house. Seal all those doors and windows. Make sure they're nice and tight. You want to keep embers from entering any space inside your house. We want you to turn on the lights in your house. We want firefighters to be able to see the house. It makes it easier for us to find it. It makes it easier to rescue you if that's needed. It makes it easier for firefighters to protect your home if the lights are on. Don't worry about energy consumption. If the power's on, just turn the lights on inside the house. We'd like you, if you have time, to seal your vents. I'm going to show you a great picture of what this looks like. We want you to seal the vents into the crawl space, into the attic spaces, any opening that could potentially allow embers into your house. We've got a lot of information in our home hardening seminars online, why vents are vulnerable, but those vents into your crawl space and attic are commonly the entry point for embers that burn houses down. We want you to move combustibles away from the house. I'm talking about things like combustible furniture outside the house. We want you to prop open gates. We want you to put hoses and buckets out, place ladders, shut off the gas and propane if you have time. That evacuation order, the decision to leave might be made for you if you receive an evacuation order, but it also might be a decision you need to make. If you have no communication, if you've lost access to cellular and internet, you don't have a battery backup radio, you might need to decide to leave. So certainly leave when ordered, but leave if conditions worsen. If you aren't sure, go ahead and leave. If you feel unsafe, if embers are falling in your neighborhood, it's absolutely time to leave. You may have to make that decision on your own and be prepared to make that decision.
Whoops, a little.
Are we having technical difficulties, Michael?
Yeah, our user errors here. There we go. So I'll pause for a minute and say that what I've done and what VERG has done is select a short list of information that we're sharing in this presentation. There's an overabundance of information you can find out there, from anywhere from CAL FIRE to Listos to Ready Marin to Fire Safe Marin, FEMA. Just, you know, there's an enormous amount of information. So if you're the kind of person that really wants to investigate this and find out, learn more and more and more, you can go to the Fire Safe Marin site, because it has layers and layers and layers of information. What we're attempting to do in this presentation today is just get you some of the basic information, and then if you want to learn more, you can go to those links that I was talking about before. So I am using content from Ready Marin for this. This is a stay kit, from their perspective, is more for earthquake. And they have a very nice list of the kind of things that you should have in as your stay kit. And they recommend that you go ahead and get this, all the things here in the food and water, and rotate those, as needed, according to the expiration dates. And then have things for eating and cooking, for sanitation. Make sure you've got things for the pets, and a good list of things that are for health and safety. Also, they talk about needing water. Storing water is a critical component of disaster planning, and you'll want to turn your water off in the event of an earthquake. You can always turn it back on. What we want, though, is to keep the water in your home from being contaminated from sewage pipes that might contaminate the water. And they've got a nice rule of thumb here that talks about water storage of 1 gallon per person and per pet per day, and that can add up pretty quickly. So if you want to get an idea, you can do the math on how much you might need over the course of, say, 5 to 7 days or longer. And remember that in your home there's between 30 and 50 gallons of water in your hot water heater, so that's available as well. It'll just have to be filtered. But this list, and it is actually 2 pages, is at Ready Marin Org, and I will send out that link as well. And then help friends and neighbors get ready. And this slide is what we use for when we're talking to people who are not part of a neighborhood group. So some of the things you've already done and Jeanette's already done, like call a neighborhood meeting, like the one we're in right now, is just choose a couple of people to be the neighborhood leaders. Well, we've already got Jeanette as a neighborhood leader, and if there's anyone else in the neighborhood who would want to be the sort of the backup neighborhood leader, that's great, in case she's on vacation or she's at work, and there are some things that need to be done because of a disaster that's taking place. And be sure to reach out to those folks that are vulnerable, help them make a plan. I've talked with some folks who believed that, you know, a relative was going to come by and pick them up if there was any sort of a disaster. And then to learn that the relative lived, you know, up in Santa Rosa, you know, and there was no way that that person was going to come by and help. So we not only needed to make sure they identified someone that would help them evacuate, but also confirm that they had a place to go and that they would have a go bag. They'd be able to take the things that were very important to them with them, given the time to evacuate. And then finally, I mentioned a NOAA radio. We're distributing those. Those are actually have been provided by FireSafe Marin, and they're weather radios that have been programmed to give an alert if there's something like an evacuation warning or an evacuation order. They're loud enough to wake people up, and we're distributing those right now to aging adults in the community. So if you know somebody who would need one of those radios, let me know, let Jeanette know, and we'll get them on our list and see if we can get them a NOAA radio. And finally, then identify resources in the community, whether it's folks that have a generator, for healthcare professionals, first responders, CERT-trained individuals. There is a CERT-trained individual in your neighborhood that happens to be Jeanette Rosen. She took the CERT class and has learned about emergency training that might be needed in a disaster.
And Dave Rosen.
And Dave Rosen, absolutely. Absolutely.
And we might have more. We'll definitely survey that when you're done. Yeah.
Terrific. So that concludes the part of the presentation that is about preparedness. And I wanted to transition from that into this concept of fire adapted communities, because it's a new idea of how we should be living with fire, and presents a new idea of what we may want to do as homeowners and residents of the valley. So I'll go ahead and get this started.
I think that we need to start by trying to answer what is a fire adaptive community. And there's a couple of definitions because every community is different, and the different activities that go into a fire adaptive community are going to vary depending on the community itself. The National Wildfire Coordinating Group defines a fire adaptive community as a human community consisting of informed and prepared citizens collaboratively planning and taking action to safely coexist with wildfire. So you see across the top, that means whether you're a civic leader, a developer, a business owner, first responder, a land manager, or a homeowner, there are all roles to play. Everyone has a responsibility in a fire adaptive community. Another definition that's widely used comes from the U.S. Forest Service. And it is a knowledgeable and engaged community in which awareness and actions of residents regarding infrastructure, building, landscaping, and the surrounding ecosystem lessen the need for extensive protection actions and enables the community to safely accept fire as a part of the surrounding landscape. So when you see comparatively side by side, many people have the mindset that they need to have a war on fire. And a shift in thinking from a fire adaptive community standpoint might be that we need to work with the flow, the natural process that fire actually is. People might start with the mindset that wildfire is destructive, but they also need to understand that wildfire is a necessary natural process. People think that they need to control wildfire on their landscapes, but they also need to learn to live with fire on these fire adapted landscapes. A lot of people think that we just simply need to prevent and suppress the fires. Another mindset is to create fire-resistant human and natural communities together. Some people feel that the problem of wildfires is that they are escaping control. But there also is equally the problem that by suppressing all of these fires in the natural wildfire have helped create a problem of buildup of fuels, which creates much larger and unnatural fires. Lastly, people may think that the solution to applying existing procedures and technology just will bring a more strong control of fire, whereas a fire adaptive community might understand finally that the solution is to develop a more holistic approach to fire management, where local communities adjacent to property owners and government work together to co-manage the fire risk. It's important to understand that in fire adaptive communities, the public understands certain components. They understand that there's a role that fire will play on the surrounding landscape. They understand that fire authorities cannot save all homes and may not be able to. And lastly, that the community mitigation actions will reduce the unwanted impacts of fire. In a fire adaptive community, the public also is going to take action. They're going to support and enhance local fire protection capacity, what the firefighters can do and then what they can do through Ready, Set, Go. They can prepare structures for wildfire via either being Firewise or living with fire or similar principles. They need to take action to build fire-resistant materials and use low-risk landscapes. They also need to increase and maintain risk reduction efforts over time. This is the holistic approach that the community needs to take under a fire adaptive community model. The community takes a variety of integrative actions specific to their community. So as you can see, there are many different steps that a community can take, and not every community is going to take the same step. You know, fire adaptive communities are for every community and they're unique. There are certain steps and strategies that they can take to improve their own resilience, and they will vary from place to place. All stakeholders have share the wildfire risk. They have to become a part of fire adaptive communities. They have to help with the strategy and the stress. Everyone shares a responsibility. Is a fire adaptive community just a new name for Firewise? No, it's not. Firewise is a program. Fire adaptive communities is a process, again, a holistic approach. And then how will we know when the community is finally fire adaptive? There is no ending defined point for communities striving to live more safely with wildfire because the work is never finished. At the heart of the process is this local collaboration, planning, coordination, and action. It takes agencies, citizens, and all players have to get together and exchange ideas and information about these efforts and lay out strategies for moving forward.
And so that leads me into Firewise in the Valley. I know that Jeanette had mentioned Firewise in her email, and I can give you an update on where we are as far as creating a Woodacre Firewise approved site. And we're close to having that completed. And I'll get into some of the more details after I talk about benefits of Firewise. So it's a framework for fire risk mitigation. And VERG and Firewise really go well together because VERG, our goal is to organize communities and make sure that we've got neighbors helping neighbors and that we've got our neighborhood leaders and village coordinators building this network of folks who are focused on being prepared. So on that framework, we can overlay Firewise, which is about fire risk mitigation. And it isn't a program where people are going to come out and inspect people's homes and try and force them to do something they don't want to do. It's about raising awareness and also educating folks. It draws neighbors into projects that benefit the entire community, and it helps neighbors in need. And it has the idea that collectively we can accomplish more. So I'll give you an idea of what we've done so far with our Firewise assessment. We have teams that have walked almost all of the streets in the valley, and we're taking notes just to get an idea of the character of Woodacre, and to note some specific things that are really important. So one of those things is we found a lot of homes that don't have a very clear address on their house, which is obviously important if the fire department's trying to get to your house, or if there's an ambulance coming. So that's one of the things that we'll share with the community, to say one of our first year goals for Firewise in the Valley is to create an awareness and prompt people to actually look and make sure that their addresses are clear and able to be seen. Another one is very simple, looking at leaf litter around homes, looking for piles of wood that are right next to the home, or any building materials, which create a fire hazard as well. And those kind of getting rid of leaf litter and moving a pile of wood are not things that are costly. They're just kind of common sense things. And they really make a difference in terms of keeping Woodacre safer and reducing fire risk. There's a video associated with Firewise where they show in a lab they've created these ember storms, and they show that those land in leaf litter or land in firewood, and that's how homes start on fire. It's not that some people have a misconception that fire goes through a neighborhood just one house after another, and it's the heat and the flame nearby that actually cause those houses to combust. And that's not really how it works. So if we do take these small actions like cleaning up leaf litter and moving firewood away from a home, then or taking out some specific plants that are really have high fire danger, then the whole community starts becoming more safer. There's also a bonus right now if there's an insurance discount with USAA, which is primarily for veterans. And if you're part of a Firewise community, then they extend that discount to you. And that may be a trend that could continue. It may be that folks that provide homeowners insurance will also start offering discounts when you're in a Firewise community. So I can certainly talk about that at greater length and fill in more details at some other time, but I just wanted to talk about what we're doing here in Woodacre, and we will be a Firewise site probably by the end of the month. Moving on to the VERG communication network. We do have a network of folks who have what are called FRS radios. You would think of them as walkie-talkies. We have somewhere between 9 and 13 folks that get on walkie-talkies every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock to check in and to just keep practiced on the use of the radios. And then once the neighborhood checks in, once Woodacre checks in, then I communicate with folks that are on a different kind of a radio, a GMRS radio, that is better at communication from one village to the next, and isn't the signal isn't interrupted by the terrain so much. And that's how we create this network that could be very handy to have in the case of something like an earthquake, when first responders can't make it here and we have to have CERT volunteers, or we have neighborhood leaders going out and reporting what's going on of collapsed structures, or power lines down, and just helping the first responders really get a clear picture of what's going on in the community so they can prioritize what they're going to be doing. We also send daily email blasts when possible. We were doing that during the Woodward fire to keep people posted and make sure we direct them to information sources that are credible. I think we saw during the Woodward fire that some people were getting on some of the local listserv or whatever and making statements or just getting some information out there that wasn't accurate and maybe caused some anxiety. So we're trying to make sure everyone gets good, clear information about the situation. We also are able to have a disaster response. We are prepared to open an incident command center if necessary. And this kind of activity would be done by the co-chair, Brian McCarthy, who I had mentioned as a former battalion chief for Ross Valley Fire. We also have Jim Fizzackerly, who is a former captain in EMTs in San Francisco. So we've got people who have experienced disasters. They know how to respond in an emergency, and they would go to the school and open a command center, get things set up so that we can respond and take care of ourselves until the authorities arrive. We would hand over the reins, to the professionals when they're there. So we're able to fill that gap between the beginning of a disaster and when the trained professionals arrive. And as we mentioned before, we also are prepared to organize our CERT team members. So in summary, we believe that when individuals and families are prepared, our entire community is safer. We want folks to know when to leave, where to go, that they have their go kit and have important belongings ready, that they have our stay kit. We think that when neighbors are organized, they can help one another. We want to support the adoption of a fire adaptive perspective. We want to support folks creating defensible space and having hardened homes. And we believe that we're stronger and safer when we all work together in the community. So I'll turn it over to Jeanette and the folks to ask questions, or if Jeanette, you want to, ask folks where they are in terms of the preparedness scale or what kind of new information we might have presented. I'll let you go from there.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Michael. Wow, that I try and keep abreast of all of this great info, and there were still some really great nuggets in there that I didn't know before. So thank you a lot for that. I think we should start with questions just while it's fresh in everyone's mind. Does anyone have questions for Michael before we kind of dive into a neighborhood specific conversation?
I have an overall question that might that everyone might be interested in. I know Stephanie was starting to look into rooftop sprinklers to set up on our house, and I was just wondering if anybody had any systems or if Michael had any recommendations on the types of systems that that are good. We really don't have experience with them.
Thanks. That's a great question. I know I have not looked into them themselves. We have one of our board members recently did some research and found that it was quite a costly system that he looked at. It was both sprinklers and foam. One thing that our Brian McCarthy, who's experienced firefighter, said was, if we get a lot of folks that are using those systems, then it's going to deny the fire department the water they need. So we're looking into those systems, more than we had in the past, especially since we've heard that some insurance companies are starting to are not interested in well, we actually had one of our members had his insurance canceled when he refied his house. And it was said that if you deploy that kind of a system or a foam system, that it would increase the likelihood of getting reinsured. So we're really focusing on insurance right now because that's something that's come up within the last 30 days. But anyway, the short answer is no, we haven't really looked into those, but it's something that I know we should do as a service to the community.
If I could jump in here for a sec, I'm going to have to go. I'm actually up in Bodega Bay and have to go have dinner with the people I'm visiting here. But I'll just quickly mention, I just recently had a big hedge of bamboo removed because bamboo is so flammable. It kind of broke my heart, but it felt like the right thing to do. And put a a large reflective street address out on the outside of the house as well. So those are a couple of things that I've just done recently. And Jeanette, thank you for organizing us. And if you do need help with what you're doing, feel free to let me know. And it's good to see all of the neighbors, and I'll stay in touch, but I do have to go.
Yes, and Ray, we'll definitely let you know about next meeting, and also, you know, hopefully, I think it should be able to be in person, right? So that'll be a lot nicer, and we can dive more into specific details then. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Ray.
Let's see. I had a question, which is, I don't know if there's a way to communicate with PG&E as far as like regionally for them to know that we don't have internet when the power's out. You know, because we don't have cell service out here, because they always are sending updates that have a link to the website to go to get, and it's like so frustrating. So, but I don't know how to, if there's a way to communicate that to them, like we need the actual information in a text, like, because that's the only way we're going to get it.
That's a great point.
You said we need the information in text.
Well, we can get text messages generally, even if we're not able to get a phone call. If they can actually put whatever information they're trying to communicate, like in the text message, as opposed to like a link to a website in a text message. Because if our power's out, we don't have internet, and I don't have enough we don't have enough cell connection to be able to go on the internet, like, so.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Barely get text, but that's the only hope at all.
Exactly.
And we have a generator, so it's not even an issue of electricity. It's like the whole internet goes out when the power
Yep.
goes out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Michael, do you have any ideas about that, about how we can encourage PG&E to communicate with those of us in internet challenged and cell service challenged neighborhoods?
That's a great question, and we have talked about the issue of not being able to get communication, kind of being in a void when even down here where I live, I can get texts at the corner of the dining room table, but other than that, I need to drive down to the post office to actually get a signal. And we've talked about, and part of our sort of our purpose and goals for 2021 is to be a stronger advocate for members in the community, and this would be an example of that, where we would reach out to PG&E. It may be that we need to do that through Dennis Rodoni. It may be that we need to find some other means to do that, but we think that as VERG and representing the Valley will have more leverage than if we just encourage individuals to call, or to write them. So I made a note of that, and I think that maybe we can continue looking for other things that the community would like us to do. As Walt had said, look at sprinkler systems and those kind of, research that a little bit, but also not only let PG&E know that their texts need to be all text and not send us to a link, but also do things like work on fuel breaks that they should be taken care of, work with the county and some of the work that needs to be done here that is vegetation management that, so far we might have to do ourselves if we can't, really persuade them that that's critical for the Valley.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm sorry. See, I don't want to. You're next. I was just going to say I'm definitely writing all these down as issues that our neighborhood is interested in. Go ahead, Sia. Oh, you're muted, I think.
Unmute. How many households are actually in our pod here?
There's 17. There's
17.
17
Okay.
homes. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I'm curious about that. And if we need to have an in-person meeting, we could probably do it on our deck if, we could do that.
Great. I'm writing that down as a neighborhood resource.
Yeah, right. There you go. That's about all we got.
That's about it.
That's it.
Do we have weekly meetings for this VERG thing?
Yeah,
We have a
absolutely.
lot of work to do.
And we have wine.
And we have wine.
I think it's important for me to attend too, then, as a representative of, the whole VERG organization.
Oh, come on. You just want the wine.
Yes.
He wants the deck too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we got sun up there.
Son,
I-
I would like to, Steve, I'm going to blow your horn. Steve has so many resources, and so does Ken. These guys right there, Steve and Ken, are so resourceful. I just would like to see them put to work.
Yeah, no, I am happy. We will all be put to work in whatever way we are willing and able to be put to work, for sure. And I love that. Maybe that's a good segue, unless anyone else has questions specifically for Michael and about. Oh yeah, Eileen.
Okay. I've been worried about Ezekiel's field, which is behind my house. You can see it from some of your properties. It's a great big open grassy area. I don't know how dangerous that is. And also the Marin Municipal Water Department, are they doing anything like slow burn, carefully getting rid of any fuel that might be building up?
Not to my knowledge, but I am working with someone from the fire service who's looking at areas around the community that need cleanup. So if you can, I'm not familiar with that field, but if you can share where that is, we can certainly take a look. But it's part of, right now they're focused on cleaning up evacuation routes that are not county maintained. And we may also be able to get them to engage some of their crews to do additional work. And maybe this field is something that they can focus on.
I think there's the North Bay Conservation Corps, which could be a good resource to do things. It's a youth organization where they hire youth in summer programs to do a lot of nitty gritty maintenance. And it might, if you need some, arms and legs and strength and, youthful energy, they could be, I think, a great resource. I'm not sure what their parameters are, but.
Great, I'll check on that. We've got, one of our members is also, I think is part of that organization. I don't know exactly what his role is, but I'll ask him. What we can do to enlist the help of those folks.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, hopefully that will be addressed as part of the Firewise assessment. But yeah, that'll be interesting to find out. Thank you, Eileen. So if we can kind of transition then into kind of more specific, just a more specific conversation about our neighborhood, and I think I'd like to take the temperature of everyone in terms of how do you see our neighborhood organizing, as part of, as Michael mentioned, my husband and I both did the CERT training, which is the community emergency response training, in order to be able to kind of mobilize and be helpful for the community. And I'm just curious if anyone else has CERT training is interested in it, or what other kinds of skills and how do you see your role and your ability to kind of help out the neighborhood in the event of an emergency? Maybe we could start with Steve. You want to start with you, since you and Ken, I think, since you were both specifically called out by CF.
Okay.
Steve?
Oh, Steve, you're muted.
No?
Unmute him.
There we go. Almost. Still muted.
There you go.
Still muted.
No.
Got it. There we go.
There we go.
They can hear me. So as Sia was aware, I have extensive training in emergency response. Worked for Chevron Corporation for many, many years, finishing up the last 20 years in commercial real estate, when we were very concerned, of course, about everything that, some of the things that were already mentioned, everything from active shooter to fire suppression and evacuation in our large office buildings. So I carry that background with me. This is a new area to have it community oriented like this, which is great. I knew that you guys were on the right path because, as we talked earlier, Jeanette, yeah, I thought I already signed up for that. Well, I went to a couple meetings a couple of years ago, and I said, well, this crew is on the right path, and they have the right connections with the official responders that are going to make it a success. But I haven't had a chance to return to VERG, and yet I'm still, I think, more than willing to give my best to make it a success. One of the questions I had from your earlier comment about our 17 resident pod is how you are connected, Jeanette, to Buckeye Circle. And is there another person like you that says, just as we heard, hey, or even when do we walk out of church? Let's take the right aisles first, and so forth, so we don't get in the way of each other. It seems that there has to be some good coordination locally and up and down Redwood to make that happen as we go forward. To make us Firewise and emergency ready.
For sure, and I think right now Buckeye Circle does not have a neighborhood coordinator. I have my eye on someone up there that I think would be excellent and probably willing to take on that role.
Or do we just sweep them into our community, the other alternative?
I'm sorry, what was that, Steve? I missed what you said.
I was thinking we could sweep them into our community and make it 17 plus the 20 or so that are.
Absolutely. And Michael can speak more to this. My understanding is that VERG, I think in tandem with the fire department, kind of, made maps and kind of carved up section, digestible bites of the valley, in order to just ensure that the scope wasn't too out of hand, and that, it could be very kind of, local, uber local focus. But I don't know how much, I'm fine with that, and I would love to coordinate and work closely with someone close by, because as we know, the truth of the matter is, in the event of an emergency where, certainly you need coordinated efforts when you're evacuating, but in the case of an emergency where you're staying at home or sheltering in place or dealing with, the aftermath of like God forbid, a catastrophic earthquake, where we're going to be on our own for not days but weeks. You need more than that 17. Especially as far as like a CERT team goes, and like where's your first aid center and where's your, you need more hands on deck for that type of thing, obviously. But that's something that we are definitely working on, and that I know has been a subject of conversation with different neighborhood leaders as well. Coordinating with the larger village, right, and kind of tightening up that communication, and just starting to get really clear on how that works. So I guess the answer is that it's a work in progress, but you're 100% right.
I can speak to a little bit more. So, just like I think anything that's volunteer, this kind of grows organically. So, bringing those folks that are in Buckeye Circle into this group is great. It means that they're going to be belong to part of a neighborhood. But ultimately, we want to see maybe 15 to 20 folks in any neighborhood. So the way it might play out is a couple of folks from Buckeye Circle join the Redwood group. They benefit from your enthusiasm and your skills and so on. And then as they spread the word up in Buckeye Circle, then that they find another neighborhood leader, and then they split off as a group themselves. And I think, you know, the concept came from, you know, if you look in other places in Marin County, you'll see organizations called NRGs, and that stands for Neighborhood Resource Groups or Readiness Groups. And the NRG concept pretty much stays with that 15 to 20 members in an organization or in a neighborhood. And I think this was actually started up in Washington State, but that's proven to be the best size of a neighborhood, so that there is, you know, span of control, which I'm sure is familiar to some folks. You know, the ability to actually reach all the folks in the neighborhood if there is an issue, and so that's where we like to see things end up. But again, they grow kind of organically. So if Buckeye Circle folks wanted to be part of your neighborhood, and then as they grow split off, that'd be perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I did actually invite a few people from a little bit further away. There was also tonight I invited some people from, was it the Salix group, right, Michael? I think yeah, just because we do, I mean, obviously we want to take care of our immediate area and know that, you know, if we, you know, again, God forbid something catastrophic happens, and we're, you know, and after we make sure our families are safe and make sure our homes are safe, we do need to go out and canvass the neighborhood and see what we can do to help our neighbors. You know, that we obviously want to have close relationships with, you know, our immediate, of course, our immediate neighbors, but also, you know, this is our village, right? So all the people around us will need to be working together at some point. But
So other notes to make on your part, Jeanette, from me, and then I'll be quiet for a while. So I do have a structural engineering degree, master's in that. I'm a civil engineer. I can help people with those types of things, ranging from control systems to, you know, is this going to fall down right away type question. Yeah.
You're my survey guy. You're my, is this house safe to go back into guy?
and
that's huge, Steve.
One as was mentioned earlier is incident command training in that, because of the population that was in our office complexes or office areas. The incident command process and handover to the official authorities is something I have had quite a few drills in. So that's good background. You know, not necessarily perfectly applicable, but the processes are.
Yeah, that's okay. This is wonderful. So you also, if this is something you're interested in, I mean, are also potentially someone that's perfect to coordinate with emergency services, to be a point person, because ideally I like that as a one person.
Well, the one thing that we did extensively in my experience has been not only have these excellent gentlemen like Mike helping us with their past experience, but having a drill process at some point to really get people interested and excited about, well, if they can be here, how do we work with them correctly? Yes. And who do they know to find, and know a face even when they show up, to say, find Jeanette, she's our local coordinator, you know, and the captain or whoever comes up the hill can say, all right, how are we doing?
Yeah.
And quickly know where to go, make sure that linkage is there.
Yeah, and that's definitely a huge part of the CERT training is you know, being able to put yourself in, you know, in those kind of, you know, role-playing situations and drills, so that you have a little bit of kind of maybe not muscle memory, but you know, you can very easily put yourself in that situation and kind of have a point of reference when you're there. That's, I mean, it almost sounds, I don't know that you necessarily need to be CERT, but is anyone else interested in CERT training? Because I know there's a waiting list now for it.
Good that there is a waiting list, so people are interested.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
which
I
is
think-
wonderful. I mean, that's great. That's good. That's definitely good news. But you
And I
know,
think sorry, Jeanette, the wait list comes from the idea that the only training that they've been doing is what they're called hybrid training, which is part of it in an online course, and then setting up a 1 8-hour day of hands-on. And they just completed that training in Mill Valley for 28 or 30, I think, folks, and the next one's coming up in July. So it's been restricted a little bit, but to your point, Jeanette, it's great that a lot of folks have an interest.
yeah.
Steve, I wonder if you'd be interested in being part of our team from an incident command perspective. I think we're always looking for folks that have that kind of experience to join with Brian and Jim Fazzackerly in helping set up incident command when we have that need.
I would retain that interest. Yes.
Okay, great.
I mean, if I don't do it, Sia's going to slap me upside the head. So
Yeah, you're damn right I will. You got to take care of me.
We're the old folks.
Yeah, the old people. Take care of your old seniors.
Hey, happy birthday, Pat.
Thank you.
I hear it's your thank you.
Happy
Sorry I planned this on your birthday. That wasn't very nice.
Oh, that's fine. Just another day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah.
You know, just another shout out to, I mean, not only do Joan and Steve have a generator, but Ken and Katie have a generator. I don't know if we were going to get into that kind of thing tonight or not, Jeanette.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably a next meeting thing, just in terms of time, and that way we can kind of create we can kind of create a skills list. We can create an interest list. I mean, I'm definitely absorbing all of this now, and we'll be following up with people, definitely for sure. But you know, in terms of getting into supplies and equipment and designating meeting areas and where we might set up a first aid area or where in terms of all of those specifics, I think that's more of a next meeting thing, just for time. But I'd love to hear your interests and your skills and anything any way you're interested in being involved in our little neighborhood VERG.
Yeah, I definitely think that inventory question is an excellent one, and down to the level of automatic earthquake shutoff on propane tanks.
Yeah,
I mean, how many people have that? Do they not? Do they even know if they have them or not? It's also worthwhile to, from even a Firewise perspective, I'm sure, to think that, okay, where are the generators? Who has turn-off valves? Who has to turn them off manually?
Right.
Ready to run up the hill,
And that's definitely a next step with kind of canvassing the neighborhood. And I'm sorry, Stu, I interrupted you. I didn't mean to.
No, I was just making a joke that Katie and I'll run up the hill and turn off the valves if we know where they're at.
All right, if we know where they're at, right? Yeah, if I have to. But no, we do. That's definitely kind of a next step in getting everyone getting more buy-in, and also that then we can kind of start talking about the specifics of walking around the neighborhood and doing that kind of survey and putting it on a map, so that then becomes part of the neighborhood plan in the event of an emergency.
In the event someone's not home, then others know how to access their danger spots. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's it's a funny thing because being in the position of wanting to organize the neighborhood and kind of help coordinate people, I am wanting to be sensitive to people's privacy as well, and not appear to be too like snoopy and like, yes, I'm writing down everything about you and like the ages of your children and where you're this and that is. I'm trying to be mindful of that too, but I think that as we talk more and as, we build trust and as kind of, we all get on the same page, I think that that's definitely a step that can happen,
Yes. Especially with our wildfire awareness at such a peak these days.
Yes. Yes. That should work to our advantage, I think. And communicating the necessity and the advantage of that.
We may not make it.
May not.
Yeah. Oh wait, but Ken, you were going to tell us all kinds of stuff about yourself. Speaking of which.
Yeah, I guess I'm not entirely sure how much of you want to know. I do have some training in like factory environments with like machinery. In terms of my background is mechanical engineering. So we've done trainings in terms of emergency procedures, evacuating buildings, meeting places, sweeping buildings, shutting off utilities, having an evacuation plan, hazard, all that stuff for materials and everything.
Great.
So
Also, Ken is just very handy and has a ton of tools.
He's
and stuff, so-
resourceful and
Yeah.
simply
So-
resourceful.
Yeah.
so I mean,
Right.
I'm happy to help. So
And I will
Awesome.
say,
That's huge.
that I am a physician. I specialize in psychiatry, so it's been a while since I've been to medical
she's a good
school.
doctor.
But there's some skills there in case of like medical needs.
Wonderful.
I was
That's
thinking.
wonderful.
I was thinking in terms of like practical things, like, oh, sorry, yeah, we can take care of that. Just like I have a gravity fed water filter. So if everybody's got 50 gallons of water heater water and they don't know how to filter it, like I've got a little bag from backpacking. You just put the water in and it'll filter itself. So stuff like that. I mean, that's probably, the list of that is probably better for next meeting, but
Yeah.
those kinds of things are available.
Yeah, but that's exactly the kind of things that, we should have a neighborhood inventory of, so we know, what's what people are willing to share and what's available and what, and where it is, who to go to when we need it.
Sure.
No, this is all great. How about I'm calling specifically on Steve and Ken because Sia called you out, but I'd love to hear about, some of us might be here just to kind of like get an orientation and kind of a background in preparedness as an intro. Some of us might be here because, we're interested in being involved in a certain way. So if anyone else wants to share that, that's wonderful.
I personally have been worried that we haven't gotten as organized as that I'd like to be. So I'm so glad that you're doing this. But I'm wondering, is this going on throughout the rest of Woodacre? Are there groups being formed where people are communicating with each other, and then we can all go down to WIC and...
There are. Michael can speak more to the specifics of the scope of that, what it looks like.
Okay.
Sure. So we have 71 neighborhood leaders, in the role that Jeanette's taken in the Valley. And, I guess with like any organization, some folks are active and really organizing. Other folks are maybe, transitioning out of the role. So it's, my goal to get out there and understand who's really taking steps to make sure that we're prepared and making sure their neighbors are communicating and prepared and interested in things like Firewise so that we can do some fire mitigation. So to answer your question, we've got some really good, strong volunteers doing it, but it's not, we need many, many more folks in that role. So if you have have friends who are interested in VERG who are not signed up, encourage them to sign up, and we'll see if they also have an interest in doing something like becoming a neighborhood leader.